y'all, it's Melissa here, and I'm here to join you guys today about tips and tricks on stabilizer alternatives. So a lot of times with our projects, we suggest different types of stabilizers that you should use within the project or in the tutorial's construction of the project. Today I wanted to go over a few of those and kind of direct you to some alternatives you might have on hand in case you might have run out of one of the stabilizers or suggestions we tell you. So let's take a look at some of the frequently used stabilizers as well as some options we have on hand. The first stabilizer that we use frequently at Anita is often used in our quilt block collections, and this would be our NoShow Mesh stabilizer. Now I wanted to also show you guys that this comes with an alternative color option that we also have black. So let's say you're doing a project where you're worried about seeing the stabilizer, or maybe the stabilizer doesn't matter. You can actually alternate between those two different colors. We also often use a tearaway project base for anything that involves freestanding elements that get taken out of the stabilizer. Now we may use a wash away, but we also can use tearaway, and sometimes they are interchangeable. We have both black and white on hand, so depending the project and the finishing edge, you can choose the color that'll fit closest to your satin stitches. We also have the option of a sticky back stabilizer. This often comes on a roll and can be used as your stabilizer within the hoop. In this example, I have a wash away sticky back, so you would hoop this in place of standard wash away, and you'd score the paper surface with a sharp object, scissors or a seam ripper, and then you remove the paper backing and you'll have that water soluble stabilizer with the extra stick. Now let's say you don't have any sticky back on hand for your project, but you do have tearaway on hand. This is when the handy thing of temporary spray adhesive comes in. We use a brand called 505 spray, but any temporary spray adhesive will work. You can hoop a piece of tearaway and then spray the surface with that sticky stabilizing spray, stick your fabric to it, and the project can be completed like normal. So now that we've gone over a few of the stabilizers we commonly have on hand, let's take a look at some project examples and some alternative stabilizers you could use for those. First up, we have zippered bags. So a great example of this is our tutorials usually explain to do these on a NoShow Mesh stabilizer. Now often, since we have white on hand, that's the color that we're using. But like I mentioned earlier, it also comes in black, so you can switch out that stabilizer to change the color. We did unlined bags in these examples, but let's say I have a dark base fabric for my bag and I'm not doing it lined, but I want to be able to use a stabilizer that's not as blatantly obvious. In this instance, I could actually use the black NoShow Mesh instead for a cleaner finished look. For designs that have vinyl in the windows, we do have some snack bags like that, and they're not always lined either. In this case, we actually used a tearaway stabilizer so that you wouldn't see the stabilizer through the window. And again, we mentioned how we have both white and black, so you could use a different type of stabilizer depending the stitches and the color of the material you're using. So for holiday cards, these are a really cute and quick and easy project you guys can do directly in the hoop, perfect for any season of the year, and making these is a breeze and usually uses a stabilizer you would have on hand. With cards, we're usually suggesting to use a paper or tearaway stabilizer so that the card will be nice and sturdy, and we're usually using that white stabilizer that I mentioned before. So if we open up our card, you'll see we still have some of that white tearaway in the back of the design. Some fun tips and tricks for you guys is you can use patterned fabric or even cardstock with a print on it and some 505 or spray adhesive to help cover up those stitches. Most card directions will include a placement stitch for you guys to know exactly where to lay your card, but if by instance it does not, or you are doing your own DIY project, you can use tearaway in conjunction with the spray adhesive to help keep it in place. Next up, we have tea towels. This one is from Tea Towel Tizzy, very cute. Our tea towel collections are usually done with an indicated placement stitch for you guys, but the stabilizer can be up to you. So some examples I wanted to talk about is normally we do this on a wash away stabilizer, and most times when we suggest wash away, we do suggest doubling it up. This will provide a little bit more stability in your hoop and prevent your design from pulling or coming out. But let's say we don't have any standard wash away on hand, that's when we can also use that sticky back that we mentioned. So again, I have that sticky back wash away stabilizer. You would hoop this and score the paper backing and then peel that away. So then you would be left with a tacky wash away stabilizer, and we would simply run our placement stitch like the design asks for and do the embroidery. And at that point when the design is finished, since it is a wash away, you'd be able to rinse away the remaining stabilizer and you'll be left with your pretty tea towel. Last but not least, I wanted to go over what to do with quilt blocks that involve more than one hooping. So sometimes we do have quilting collections that will feature three-dimensional or 3D objects on them. In this case, we have this really cute flamingo that has the freestanding wing. To do these kinds of designs, you will have two separate hoopings. The first one is usually that freestanding element, so it's going to require a different stabilizer than our quilt block. So let's take a look at the options for both the freestanding piece and the block itself. So with our 3D element first, which is this little wing piece here, we're going to have to do this either on a water-soluble or a tearaway stabilizer. Depending the project, we might suggest one versus the other, but you can use them interchangeably. So for this wing, I actually would suggest doing that 2-layer piece of the wash-away stabilizer, or water-soluble. Color wouldn't matter too much since we would rinse it away. But let's say you don't have this wash-away on hand, that's where we can bring in our tearaway stabilizer. So since my bird's wing is a pink color, I actually would probably do the white tearaway so that you don't see any of the pulp or the fuzzies in the edge. But if I had a black or dark element here, you could then swap out that darker tearaway so that it's less noticeable. When it comes to the quilt block, that's where we have to use our No-Show Mesh, which usually we don't change which material that is too often. But I wanted to bring back one more time that tip or trick that if you want to use a darker version of that No-Show Mesh for quilt blocks, you can use a darker one. So if you're still working on piecing your blocks together and worried about seeing it in the seam lines on the edges, then you can use that darker color as well. I hope you guys enjoyed these extra tips and tricks from Anita on stabilizers and their alternatives, and I hope you try some of these in your next project and it comes out wonderfully.